Hey everyone, welcome to the Keep 'em Healthy podcast. This is your host, Jamie. We are locked in on season 4. This season is going to be full of curiosity, learning, and great conversation. If this show is helpful to you, please share these episodes and follow this podcast on your podcast apps. Thank you so much for listening. Let's get this conversation started. Hi, listeners. We have such a special episode today. On my show today, I have Cortney McDermott. And before we even get started to even tell you about who she is and what she's doing, I just want to talk about how we spell her name. And so Cortney is spelled Cortney. There is no U. So after this episode is done and you're going to want to look her up, do not put a U in her name or else you'll get somebody else. And we connect on this because I have no E in my name. So I'm spelled Jami and it's different from every other Jamie in the world. And it's cool to be different, Cortney.
Thank you. I agree. I totally agree.
So let me tell you about Cortney. Okay, so Cortney is an international speaker and author, and she led this journey where she was in the corporate world and was on top of the world and found unhappiness. And so now she goes and speaks to all types of people, and she has written books about your intuition and your confidence. And so, Cortney, I want to welcome you to the show, and I cannot wait to get started talking with you.
Thank you, Jamie, without an E. I'm super happy to be here. Yeah.
No, this is truly wonderful. Kate Breton is the one that introduced us and connected us to each other. And she's just such a spiritual and loving and guru in her own ways. So thank you, Kate, for this introduction. I'm going to start off this because I said to Cortney, I said, listen, there was something that I read in my process of researching you that really stuck with me. And I'm going to use this as our jumping off point. And it's this saying that it isn't self-improvement, it's self-realization. What does that mean to you, Cortney?
So the way I live this work is people coming into the truth about themselves. And essentially what that means is the truth about you is whatever you want the truth to be. And when you start to realize that, when you start to come into contact with it, the more you do come into contact with it, the more you are coming into contact with this innate intelligence that lives in all of us and is seeking to express itself in a very specific way through you. And the way it's expressing or wanting to express through you is very different from the way it wants to express through me. And so this inner intelligence, you can call it by so many names. You could call it the God self. You could call it spirit. You could call it whatever you want. A rose by any other name is still a rose. The point is, as soon as you start to make contact with it and you start to kind of be in this devotional practice of how do you want to express through me, that is when you start to realize these potentials that are available, again, specifically and uniquely to you.
I appreciate what you're saying with that because I had discovered my knowing, that's the name of my rose, my knowing a long time ago. But you must have a relationship with it and with this part of yourself. And building that is almost countercultural because we're told to seek wisdom and advice from others. Okay. I wanted to ask you about genetics and the epigenetics and our genes and how this is all involved with our intuition and like how do we use our genes to unlock all of this?
Okay, great. So, all right. So as far as I can understand from this, and I'm very much a novice in the study of epigenetics, but one of the reasons why I started to want to bring in things like epigenetics and neuroscience and quantum theory was I was wondering how were these transformations happening? The ones that I was seeing in myself, the ones I was seeing in my clients. I mean, I had a client who had, one example, she'd been suffering from really terrible eczema for 3 years, and she came and she did one session and it was gone. And I was seeing things like immediate weight loss. I was seeing all these kinds of really phenomenal things occurring for myself and clients. And so I started to get really curious about the science behind it. And so in terms of epigenetics is basically what's happening in terms of where we're directing our attention, where we're directing our consciousness, where our thought impulses, which are electrical impulses, they are essentially signaling specific genes in specific ways. Okay. So you got a roadmap, right? When you were born, you had a genetic expression. I mean, you look like your parents. There's all sorts of coding in there. Okay. And we've been, we've known for a while that our genes aren't our destiny, as they say. However, it's been less clear, and this is where epigenetics come in terms of how we actually start to modify it. So as far as I can tell, in my cases and the cases of the people I've worked with, et cetera, is we are literally starting to signal latent or dormant genetic expressions within us based on, again, what we're here specifically to express. Okay. And again, this is going to look different for everyone, but as soon as you start to feel into what are those potentials, what feels really juicy to me, that's when you start to actually signal them differently. And so it's a little bit like, one of the ways I've heard it described is like having a Christmas tree full of all these lights, and some of them are on and a lot of them are off, right? And the ones that are on are essentially the ones you've been running pathways. You've been running those same pathways. You've been telling yourself, I'm this kind of person. I'm that kind of person. And you say it about other people. So one of the things I like to say when I'm talking about epigenetics is, imagine you had this enormous library of books, infinite books, and you could take out any book you want. Every day you could take out a different adventure. You could take out a different book any day that you want. And most people are taking out the same book every single day, and they are memorizing that book. They're not even aware of this. And not only are they themselves memorizing it, but they're saying, hey, Jamie, take a look at this book and make sure that you know this is my character. Now, I'm going to go back to a minute to what I said about person, because they say, you'll notice this. You might have said it many times. I know I did in the past, is I'm this kind of person. I'm that kind of person. I'm a person who does this, right? The word person comes from the ancient Greek persona. They were the masks they wore in Greek theater. Sit with that for a second. The persona is the mask you're wearing. What's behind the mask? Now, the masks are fabulous. Okay. We're all here playing. I mean, I'm in a mask right now. I love this mask. This is a great mask. I enjoy being on the stage with this mask. At the same time, I've got other ones. And all the while, I know I am not the mask. That is an expression that is coming through this specific form, that is designed for a very specific reason, that is pursuing a very specific vision that it feels called to, because I have allowed that to occur. And because I have allowed that to occur, my physical can actually change. I can start signaling genes in different ways, and I have done so. I can start enlisting to change scientific field. I can start enlisting my reticular activating system in different ways to search for the things that match that persona. Again, important thing to pay attention to is, you're not that. You were never that. And that is also what allows us to let it go and to step into something new. Yeah.
I think that you really are onto something with saying that your persona, who you are, you wear these masks, but these masks are not who you are. You can change them. You can wear different ones. You can ignite different parts of you that you don't even know exist, that are actually just waiting to be ignited inside of you. And that's super exciting. And then it's also, I think, part of why a lot of people stay stuck is that sometimes you are so used to that one mask, you're afraid to change the next one. Because again, what if the next one doesn't sit right or makes you look weird to other people and all these things? But I think what you're trying to come to is that that's fine if you try something new, you don't love that mask. You can get
Yeah.
another one. There's more to you than just the one thing, which I appreciate that analogy so well. Like, you have such an etiquette way of creating stories behind the concepts to make it feasible for people to understand. So thank you, Courtney, for that. That was awesome. And I also think that, when it comes to epigenetics, we have this fascinating agency in our lives where we can make choices to engage with our genetics in that way. And using your consciousness is like, this would be kind of like a whole new vibe for people to be like, wow, I can think and use my way into changing the genetics of my body. And that just like blows my mind. And if I find it so hopeful and so exciting. And the way that we engage in our environment, how we are feeding ourselves, what we eat physically, and then what we take in through our eyes, what relationships we have. And I love that you're saying not only can you change that, but those things can form you, but from the inside to the out, if you want to change that outer environment, you have to start within you and start making those choices. And I hope listeners that right now you're feeling the encouragement to be like, okay, it starts with me. So let me ask you, Courtney, like, okay, it starts with me. What would be if someone came to you and was like, okay, I'm brand spanking baby new to this, what would be the first internal prompt, or what was your first thing to advise them towards this route of seeking their knowing and trusting their knowing?
Personally, I love shaking specifically. And I use this for a really long time because when I first found out about this technology, right? There's so many technologies that we have that are built in that we know as kids just intuitively, but then it's crushed out of us. And one of them is shaking. Another one I love, by the way, is yawning. Massive game changer, massive. Anyway, funny enough, both of
Oh.
those are things that, your teachers at home, they'll tell you, don't do that. It's rude, whatever it is, stay under control, basically. Shaking is one of my favorite ones. Now, when I learned this, I remember one of the people on my team, she sent it to me and she said, try out this video. And it was this technique called Koya, which actually means queen, I think, in some tribe in South America. Anyhow, Koya, came to this practice, and this woman's talked about shaking. And she said, the story that she told, Rochelle, she's the founder of this movement, she said, she told a story of a gazelle being chased through the grasslands by a tiger. She says, but the gazelle gets away. However, the gazelle does not go to therapy for the next 10 years. About this time that a tiger was chasing her through the grasslands, what the gazelle does is she shakes through every part of her body, releasing the tension, releasing the fear, and goes back to being a gazelle. Now, when I heard this at that time in my life, I could not shake parts of my body. They were so rigid. There were parts of my legs, my hips, like I couldn't really shake. I mean, I could, there was this movement that was like this, but it wasn't really shaking. Now I can shake everything. Okay. But I had to do this because I had to release a lot of what had been physically stored. Lots of times we say things are psychological. At the same time, so much is just literally physically stored. And as I said earlier in this conversation, we're in holding patterns. We literally have our cells and all of it aligned in a specific way. So we need to disrupt that so we can create a new alignment. And I could go on and on about that, but that's the simplest thing I'd say to start with. Move, keep moving, get moving, shake as one of my favorites. Put on a fast-paced song and just shake out everything, and then come back to what is true for you right now, which may be in the form of this podcast, a great book, whatever that looks like. Yeah.
Preach. I love movement. I teach dance fitness. So dancing and shaking is the best therapy, because even if you're angry dancing and angry shaking, you never leave after a song or after that movement feeling worse off than when you began. You always feel like you just release the emotion, whether it's the best emotion or the worst emotion. At least you're using your body to feel it and then release it out. Even like when I shake, I start with like my head and I go all the way to my fingertips and everything, like get off, like whatever it is that I don't want anymore. Like it's not serving me. Shake it right off. And I love that. I mean, you can quote Taylor Swift with the shake it off vibe, right? Like, and people forget that because, right, we're told sit in a chair behind a desk and like stay to yourself and like don't move, right? That's what we're told to do. But no, you're right. There's a lot of things that are natural to us, like the gazelle knowing how to shake off her worries. And we forget. And this is where I am trying to unlock that, not even for myself, but this is why I have you on, Cortney, because people listening, these are just small reminders. It's so easy. It's like, oh, all I have to do is shake. And I start my journey to better healing and better knowing of myself.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. And it's less about, we do know these things, right? We know them instinctually. And it's more about giving ourselves permission. And that's the title of my second book. It's the title for a reason, because we have to be the ones to give ourselves permission to look a little funny, for people to think, now we're changing, or whatever that looks like giving ourselves permission. You know what it's reminding me of? This George Orwell quote, like, in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the same with this. In a time where the wool is pull over everyone's eyes, like, you giving yourself permission to go with what our original equipment. This is our original equipment, okay? Kids, they have tantrums, they get down on the floor, they start screaming, and like all the things. You said, even if it's something that you're angry about, whatever, especially if it's something you're angry about, Give yourself permission. I remember so many times in the airport with my daughter where I would start doing things like shaking. I would literally go shaking my legs and I'd be doing all this stuff. And she'd say, Mom, please, please don't. This is so embarrassing. Can you not do this? And I'm like, girl, I got to do this because, we're about to get on a 15-hour flight or whatever that looked like. Right. And even though it was uncomfortable for her and it's uncomfortable for other people, like I would notice though in the airport that as soon as I started doing things like that, which I still do all the time when I travel, people start following. Like some people start mirroring that. They start stretching, they start moving differently. Like you giving yourself permission, exactly to your point of why you're doing this show, is giving permission to countless others. Yeah.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, I'm a dance fitness instructor, and my whole platform is I get up there and I give 150% of who I am and I go all out. And because I want everyone in that classroom to have that same permission to go all out. Like you don't get all this permission out in the world, but in my dance class, I'm like, if you want to be whatever version of yourself here today, that's what I want you. This is your moment to just show up and get crazy with it or get sassy with it or get angry with it. I don't care what you want to do, but I'm letting you know that I'm here doing that. So you have permission to do that, because if I don't make that a safe place for that, then they will not. And the same thing like the airport, other people get that permission. And so it's so powerful. And I think that stems from all the way back in the beginning of our conversation about role modeling and how people will change their ways when they see you in your own element and thriving in that element. And so they're like, oh, wait, I actually am supposed to be thriving too. So right now I'm teaching. So this is even more exciting. So Zumba is, I love Zumba, and it's like, Zumba is more Latino based dancing, but I teach, it's called Shine Dance Fitness, and it's all modern pop songs. So it's like all the songs on the radio and just getting wild with it. I love it. It is so much fun. It's great. And then my ladies, they'll come in and they'll be like, I was at, I was shopping at Marshall's and I heard, the Ed Sheeran Shivers come on. She's like, I just started doing it in the aisles. I'm like, yes, you did. Yes, this is exactly what I want for you. It's so cute. I love it. And listeners, I will also have information listed below on the show notes so that you can follow through and keep in contact with Cortney McDermott if you would like, and to take a look at her books as well. That'd be awesome. So Cortney, I appreciate all the time and energy that you took today to come on to the show and to share your knowledge and to ignite everyone else's passion and intuition to come into force. And so listeners, I hope that you have absorbed some of this information and it just brings you joy and peace. And listeners, thank you for listening. Cortney, thank you so much for being on the show.